This Thursday, December 6th, from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern, is a fantastic online summit and PD opportunity about personalized learning. I'll tell you more at the end of the show how to join the conversation. I'll be co-leading with Text Help and the other Ed Week participants. Formative Assessment in Kindergarten, episode 398.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Becky Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Today, we're talking with Becky Holden, an early education math teacher from Atlanta. So, Becky, today we're talking about formative assessment in kindergarten. So what does formative assessment look like in kindergarten?
What we do is we think about what a rich task would be for kids to do. And then we think about that conceptual trajectory that we might see during the lesson and what we anticipate that kids might do. And then the formative assessment comes because we think ahead about what we're going to notice and note. And those are the notes. And they got our questions during the lesson, and then they help us plan for next steps after that lesson's over.
Okay, so give me an example of what this has looked like recently.
So let's say that, like we introduced in a kindergarten class, Rec and Recs.
Wait, now what was that? What did you say?
Rec and Rec.
What is that?
Those are beads on wire. So you might have seen them ages ago, and there were maybe 10 beads on a wire, and there were like 10 rows of beads. You count with them. So what we do actually is we have 2 rows, and there are 10 beads on each row, and there are 5 red beads and 5 white beads on each row. So you can use them to count and to solve math problems. So what we wanted to introduce them as a tool for would be to think about this story, 7 little rabbits walking down the road. And as they get tired, one by one, they go down to Mole's house. So there's 7 rabbits walking down the road. That's 7 beads on the top row of the Rec and Rec. And then after a while, when a rabbit gets tired, one of them goes down to Mole's house. So then that means 6 beads would be on the top and 1 bead would be on the bottom. So it's really cool because then it gets to be, there are always 7, and then they get to see how it was 7 and 0, and then it was 6 and 1 and 5 and 2, and notice those kinds of, what happens as the story continues and how the number at the top becomes less by 1 and the number at the bottom becomes greater by 1. And so we plan it to connect with a storybook, and we act it out with stuffed animals, and it's so sweet. And then we use the Rec and Rec. So to anticipate before the lesson starts, we wonder, as kids are going to use the Rec and Rec to represent the story, are they going to need to slide all the beads back to the start position and then start over and say, now there's going to be 6 on the top and 1 on the bottom? Or are they going to have that 7 on the top and 0 on the bottom and just understand that they're going to slide 1 back on the top and slide 1 over on the bottom? Do they get that relationship between, like, if I take 1 off on the top, does that mean that I can slide 1 over on the bottom and still have 7 beads in play? So that's an example. And then if you say, so how many do you have on the top? Do they have to count them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 on the bottom? Or there's 5 red and 5 white. So can they say, I know there's 7 on the top because I have 5 red and 2 white, and that's 7. Or that's 5, 6, 7. When we anticipate all those kinds of things, that's formative assessment, because we can see, do they supersize? Can they count on? Do they have to count all? Do they understand that relationship between changing the top row to the bottom row? Do they have to start over fresh each time and just show that next part of the story, by starting at 0 and then sliding over what they need? All those pieces help us think about how they see numbers, and those are anticipations that we make notes about, and that's formative assessment.
Yes, because we're trying to understand how is knowledge forming in their mind, because they may get the right answer, but there may be some thinking that is a little off that needs to be instructed. Would you agree?
Yes, but also it helps us know where to nudge them next. Because if they start fresh, then we would, and if they start over each time, then that kind of tells us where we step in to get them to go to the next part. Or if they have to recount each time, just tell you how many are on the top and on the bottom. Could we say, well, let me see, you already know that's how many? Five. Could you say there's five and then say one more is six and one more is seven? I mean, it's not just the right and wrong answer. It's where are they on their path to get the right answer so that we know what that next question is going to be for that particular student.
So you're constantly working the room, you're constantly moving around, you're constantly talking to students about their representation of the numbers. Is that right?
Yes, yes. It's not just I'm looking to see that you have what I hope you have on your Rec and Rec. It's that I'm curious to know how you made that happen and how do you know how many there are now? Because those are pieces that help me know what your next steps are.
Now, how do you have time to do this? Is this you and the teacher, or is this you just by yourself with the students, or how do you work the classroom so that you don't have, one person, playing with a lampshade and you know how kindergartners are.
I do. That's a great question. Well, one thing that we do a lot, and it's not always possible, but sometimes, like with that Rec and Rec intro, everybody's sitting on the rug in a circle, so we can check in with a few at a time while they're all accomplishing the task. But then we always make sure that there's some time at the end where they can use it as a tool to make their own choices about what to do. And that's another opportunity that we can use to check in with kids and say, so can you show me that part of the story where it was, six walking down the road and one was taking a nap? And can you show me on your Rec and Rec? And then what happened next in the story? And, so you can still check in with more kids. So that's one way. And we have lots of different ways teachers are practicing remembering what they see. So we might have Post-its. There are different ways teachers are comfortable doing it. They might just draw boxes on a piece of paper and say, I want to notice, do they start over? Can they move the beads? Do they count them all? Do they count on? And then if you see somebody do one of those things, you just write their name in the box. I mean, it will just be as quick as that. So you might not be able to check everybody on everything that time, but you have this ongoing recording sheet that can help you see what you have learned about that particular student. And even if you don't get to everybody that time, you still get a feel for how to plan for the next experience that you're going to have with those with that class, so you can plan your next lesson and then go back and check in with kids you may not have seen. Or you could have workstations the next day because you've already, like with the Rec and Recs, once we've introduced them, then they can have a small group station, and have some independent stations and some that, where you are asking a particular task of them, and then you can check in with them and add to your notes. So there's lots of ways to get to everybody eventually.
Okay, and you've just given me an aha, because I will say that, very often when my students are learning, I will take notes about how they're learning and then I will tweak the lesson for tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I've never really thought about the importance of making notes about how they're learning and how I need to adjust. That is so important.
What are you thinking about? What did I say that makes you seem like you could use it in your class?
Well, I mean, I do that somewhat already. Like if I'm teaching binary numbers, I'll make notes for myself about, how they don't seem to understand this aspect, or mm-hmm. some can count and some can't, or, mm-hmm. and I'll make notes, but I've never really thought about the importance of making notes about learning in formative assessment. So this is something you actually teach your teachers how to do, how to make notes about their learning so they can adjust instruction.
Yes, but it starts with us. So we have to know that conceptual understanding path. We have to know it because we don't know how to recognize it in them if we don't already know it. And we don't know what that next question needs to be if we don't know what's that next piece of the learning that we might anticipate seeing kids do. So that's another important piece of this is to anticipate what you think kids might do, so that you can, because that can help you notice it. That's the notice part, and then be able to make a note of it. So it's, a lot of it comes from us on the front end before we get to be with kids.
And content knowledge, experience
Yes,
with that,
absolutely.
teaching that content.
Yeah, and conceptual understanding, which I think is maybe, I know it's content knowledge, but that those steps, like that path, it seems to be even a clearer description of what we need to understand. Like, we don't just need to know that they can say 2 + 3. That conceptual understanding, they have to do they have to count them all when they do that? Can they count on? Are they flexible in their thinking? There's a lot more to it than just that's a standard that they're supposed to learn how to do.
Well, I think this path of learning is fascinating because we're really saying that not only does teachers need to know the content of, okay, this is the answer, but we're really trying to help them along a pathway of learning. And this is much deeper than just the answer is 4 or 6. This is much, much deeper.
But teachers are, they're used to that, I think, more in reading, because we don't just say kids come to guided reading and know the words. We're used to thinking, okay, if we want them to be able to read that word, they have to know the letters, they have to know the sounds, they have to know the beginning sound, they have to know what the short vowel is, they have to stretch through to the end of the word. There's all that path of understanding that we're used to thinking about to help kids learn how to read. And it's the same thing in math.
I think that the thing that really prompts me is I have some teachers at a local school who had to create 128 days of lesson plans before school even started.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And how do you do that when you're actually using formative assessment to inform how you instruct?
I don't know.
I mean, I'm speechless too. I don't have an answer. I truthfully accept to say, I couldn't do it. How could you do that? And take this approach? We know that formative assessment, when done effectively, helps us be better teachers because we're focusing on student learning. But how can we do that when we're scripted? And how can we do that when we have to create lesson plans so far ahead? I don't have an answer.
No, I don't either. And again, it's just such a daunting task to plan the lessons, because you really do have to understand how kids are going to learn the things you want them to learn, like what that end goal is, like that standard that you're trying to accomplish. There's a complicated, deep, intricate path that you have to consider to get kids there. And, that path might go quickly some days and not so quick another day. So I don't see how you can plan that far ahead.
And I do want to mention that you are a Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching and National Board Certified Teacher. So this is something you do understand. And I just think it's an important point for people. On this show, we really try to celebrate the craft of teaching. I think that we are craftsmen and craftswomen, and it's not just the content we're trying to teach, it's how we get there. It's the learning path. It's the formative assessment and taking notes about student learning. It just is a craft. So thank you so much, Becky. The amazing thing is that, to me, that, we interview teachers from kindergarten to higher ed, but there are universal things about teaching that no matter what age we're teaching that apply to all ages. And I really think this show is one of those. So thank you, Becky.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I've written about Text Help before in their awesome Read Write toolbar and the Equatio Math Helper for Google and Microsoft. This Thursday, December 6th, from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, EdWeek is hosting an event all about personalized learning. I'll be co-hosting a panel conversation on how I help kids learn how to personalize their own learning, how we can differentiate instruction, and we'll have an old-fashioned tool of speed share at 2 p.m. in the room. Even if you can't attend live, you can sign up and review the links and transcripts later. Get ready to talk about personalized learning this Thursday from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern. Just go to https:// text.help/coolcatteacher and sign up to join the conversation.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.